Look at the most recent earnings calls from your top REITs over the last 24 to 36 months. Every single one of them has deployed somewhere between $20 and $40 million a year in CapEx on technology.
Savage. I'm going to be the moderator for all 5 of the tracks. I represent AE Ventures, but I wear a lot of different hats in my career. I am also an instructor in the business school at Kansas State University, go Cats. Probably the only reason I'm selected to be up here is that I know I can end things on time because I teach lectures every day and make sure I can time things that we finish up on time. About that, I don't bring a lot of home building experience to the table, except I do love technology. I'm naturally curious, and hopefully I can get the best out of our panel up here today. So we're going to go down the row and have them introduce themselves, tell you their name, their role, their company, and what they do. So, Demetrios.
Demetrios Barnes, Chief Revenue Officer for Zinni Home. We're modular construction, so I can build homes, I can build apartment buildings all in a factory very quickly. I was one of the founders of SmartRent, so the IoT company for multifamily. And then I have a consulting firm, Fenix Group Consulting, where we just help folks like yourselves figure out what to do, why to do it, when to do it, so that you're not killing yourselves trying to figure out all the granular steps.
I'm Taylor Weiderkher, founder and CEO of PropTech IQ. And actually, I founded this company after leading innovation for Alliance Residential Company and BH Management. And I actually used to attend this conference and sit in that seat that you guys are in right now. And really, the reason that PropTech IQ exists is to help individuals like yourselves navigate the real value of technology that's being brought to the table outside of just a rental increase. And so ultimately what we do is we actually look at real implementation data of various vendors all across the industry and all the different niches, of course, IoT, package lockers, you name it. And essentially we help you guys without having to invest millions in pilots and BI systems, understand the value of those systems in real time and translate that value for vendors in their kind of sales pitches for you guys. So,
hi everyone. My name is Sanjay Pujari and I'm the CEO and founder at Saya Life. Our mission at Saya Life is to help property owners improve their overall NOI, reduce risk in their property caused by water damage, and also help you, generate revenue streams by collecting, utility costs back from your tenants. So that's what we do.
So that's us. So our topic today, as I said, is going to be a foundation. The other 4 sessions, we're going to start getting into specific areas of technology, but today is all about understanding what is the business case for investing in technology and how can you either reduce costs on the OpEx or be able to drive some more revenue on the other side, or hopefully a combination of both. So we're going to start off looking at kind of defining the landscape, and I'm going to throw the question to our team here, starting off with Sanjay, and how do you categorize the various types of OpEx savings and ancillary revenue opportunities that are enabled by technology in today's multifamily environment?
So when you're looking at OpEx savings as well as ancillary revenue, you have to, you can't just focus on the landlord. You have to look at all the stakeholders in the ecosystem. You have insurance companies, you have utilities, you have tenants. You need to focus on all of those. Let's bucket them in 3 categories, right? So you have OpEx, operational efficiency. At Saya, we have a smart water management platform. So we do sub-metering and leak detection on the same platform. So now you're able to get real-time readings. You're able to get information on maintenance. So your maintenance crew is efficient. You're not reacting, you're proactive. So all that reduces your overall, makes your operations very efficient, so you reduce costs there. When you're looking at ancillary revenue, so the next bucket would be keep it at savings, right? Say you have risk and insurance, that's the next category I would say, right? So if you have a leak in your property, that's gonna cost you a lot of money and time, right? So if we have a smart risk mitigation solution, we detect leaks, we shut off the water, and using that information, you can leverage policy discounts, and you can leverage better coverage with your insurance companies. And now insurance companies are demanding new properties to have risk mitigation built into their buildings. The third aspect, the third category would be, with sub-metering, you can recover utility costs from your tenants. So that's you're getting your money back for what you paid for the utility companies. And we also, with analytics, with all the real-time information that we collect, we are able to create ESG metrics. With that information, you can leverage that information to get utility rebates and discounts as well. So that's how I would categorize, savings as well as revenue opportunities in the building.
So kind of a question to everyone. Over the last 5 to 10 years, how has that definition of ancillary revenue changed, or just how has that category shifted as you're seeing different technology and expectations of the customer shift?
I'll jump in immediately. When I started my company SmartRent in 2017, I'd be up at panels, I'd be talking about smart locks, and smart locks are nothing new, but in mass deployment, they're relatively light. And really they were just electronic locks that you still needed some sort of key card or something to engage. But when you started to layer in that technology with other devices, now all of a sudden this became less of some hardware that I need to buy, some CapEx cost. And now people were thinking about, okay, this is some sort of package that I can charge for, okay? Well, you fast forward to 2025, I left that company a couple of years ago, wanted to enjoy a mini retirement, but that company alone has deployed about 800,000 units across the industry. If I were to sum up all the other IoT companies, he could probably speak better than this, but there's probably 1 million or plus units that have been deployed, in these types of packages. Now what you're seeing is less of a smart package that you can charge for, because everybody around you is already doing something. And so now to be able to charge for that has become a lot less. And so
it becomes table stakes.
It's table stakes. And now what you've seen is an advancement of various AI tools, various other leasing or maintenance platforms that, to get the benefit out of them, require this tech. Right? So the conversation has shifted from heavy CapEx to this is some ancillary revenue to now it's a requirement just to take advantage of the software layers that exist out there.
Other comments and thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in just because really with the current climate of rents, right, we're not seeing rental increases for the first time in a very long time. And of course, that's got a lot of people up in arms trying to understand, well, where are we going to recover this money from? They often don't think about how many times it takes your maintenance staff to go back and forth between the office to another unit, and how many, of course, maintenance calls and things like that they can handle in a day. And that's why things like overtime for maintenance expenditures are significant. But leveraging something like a smart lock or something like that, it really is a facilitation layer, like you said, because ultimately now, if your maintenance individual has smart locks, throughout the property, and let's say they have an app that allows them to see the work orders that are coming in, and now I can go from one unit after I've finished a call right to the next unit, pretty seamlessly. Well, now in a day, instead of only being able to do 6 calls a day, I'm doing 10 calls a day. So the actual overtime labor spend that is significant comes way, way, way down. And that's, I think, really what you called into focus is your underwritten budgets, right? Right now, there's not a lot of wiggle room. And so understanding really what are your risk profiles, what are the direct impacts to your operational impact, specifically on the labor end. But also, of course, if you look at how do we mitigate things like risk from leak detection, things like that, you are absolutely able to tap into insurance savings and other buckets of money that is being spent, significant amounts of money that's being spent, that you can offset. And really, right now, getting coverage in general for your assets, I mean, we've seen it being much more difficult for a lot of these multifamily communities just because of the risk with fire. And depending on the market, obviously, you guys are in, you have different risks associated. But very, very much, there is so much money being spent to keep your assets beautiful and running smoothly and keeping your residents happy, that if you can just offset those expenditures and not look at it from a rental increase perspective, in most circumstances, the NOI is absolutely there to pay for it. But it's important that you're looking at the full picture of the software enablement layer and everything in between, on what exactly is your on-site staff doing on a daily basis, what are your maintenance individuals doing, you know what I mean, and making sure that ultimately they can perform their jobs to the best of their ability with as little additional headache as possible, such as, once again, key management and things that now, once again, have become a requirement for a lot of these residents. So
let's talk about ROI expectations for a second, because there's many of these solutions do require some type of upfront investment in this technology. So we've got a couple different stats here, and I just want to see if these jive with what you've experienced. So most smart apartment tech pays for itself in 3 years or so. Does that seem ballpark about what you're seeing?
yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, it depends on your package for sure. If it's just like things like smart locks, as I think Demetrios did a really great job of summarizing, you know, that stuff really is table stakes nowadays, and you're not going to get an increase in rent. But if it's let's say a 700 unit high rise and you're currently staffing, you know, 5 to 6 maintenance individuals and paying a ridiculous amount in overtime, then yeah, you would absolutely see that.
You'll see it on the OpEx side.
That's absolutely right.
Yep.
Absolutely right. So really, I think just depends on kind of things like garden style. I know one of our attendees, you guys are focusing on garden style. You know, there's a real big value for things like thermostats in garden style type communities, because of course, HVAC expenditures, specifically from a maintenance perspective, failures, you know what I mean? Your team's not being able to really do PM maintenance, but instead they're reactionary, right? The units are pretty much destroyed. You know, someone submits a request, hey, my HVAC's broken. By the time you get in, you're spending $20,000 to replace that. Where if you had just known, hey, because we have a smart thermostat and because we were notified this unit is running inefficiently, we can provide PM to it, and instead of spending $20,000 to replace it, we, of course, can address that concern with $500 of PM on the front end. And of course, you're getting a much longer lifespan from things like HVAC units on site. So, of course, Sunbelt states, you know, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, how much money you spend in HVACs every year. So really, I think it comes down to, once again, understanding the use case. If it's a mid-rise, garden style, high rise, and the various technologies that exist, because especially leak detection in high rise is huge. I mean, you guys, I can imagine, have detected some leaks, and that's probably caused quite a bit of headaches from the neighbors down below. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Do you want to talk about some of the ROI that you're seeing with your clients?
I think the good news is, especially for leak detection, the ROI is tangible and it's fast, right? So if you have just one, if you have a large high-rise building and you have one leak event on a riser or in-suite, you're looking at an insurance claim anywhere from $50,000 to $150,000, right? So if SIA's technology can detect that one leak, the system pays for itself, right? So it's almost maybe the first time the leak happened, it paid for it. Now, if you're looking at sub-metering, which we also offer on our platform, you're getting money from your tenants, so you're recovering a utility cost. Now that recovery over time, along with all the ESG stuff, maybe you get your money back, return on that investment, maybe 9 to 18 or 20 months. So that's your return on the investment on that. But you need to also look at all the ancillary benefits you're getting. You know, you're building partnerships with insurance. Insurance are happy. You get better policy rates, and you get discounts and more coverage. So all of those benefits, you need to add that to what you're looking at in terms of calculating your ROI.
So we've talked about there's ways that you should be able to see your costs decrease. Is one way you'll see that ROI happen. The other way is you can potentially get more rent, but that's becoming increasingly difficult.
Very.
The other place that I know, as I've talked to different individuals in the last month, the other place they do see it on the revenue side is with customer retention and not having the churn. Is that because you've got some of these things that provide some benefits, perceived benefit to your tenants, that they don't want to leave because of the technology that's within their unit, and that has a savings as well. That's just like increased rent, because you don't have that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. I was going to say, one, not to totally get off on the retention conversion conversation, but I think it's important to understand that the communities that are not deploying smart technology in any facet, they are the ones that it's taking significantly longer to fill their apartments. They are struggling with occupancy because really, I mean, Demetrios and I, we were just chatting about the Gen Z kind of equation, and really up and coming, this whole generation. It's like $2.2 trillion a year in rental spending that this generation controls. And 49% of them, they'll actually leave their jobs if they're not given the technology to do it that they expect, right? And that absolutely trickles into their living environment, because if they're not getting the connected experience that they expect, either A, they're just not renting there at all, or B, you're gonna have a much shorter retention span on that resident, and you're spending way more to fill that unit again. And it really comes down to, once again, if you can plan either in the design phase or in your retrofit projects, it doesn't have to be a gigantic CapEx investment for you guys. There are so many opportunities and different approaches where you can OpEx really a lot of that investment and then really phase in what the cost is to a community that's already standing. So really, it's not, hey, I have to spend $400,000 or $500,000 to deploy this tech, or I'm basically, pretty much obsolete. Instead, work with a vendor that actually has some sort of financial model that aligns with you guys. And at the end of the day, as you're turning new leases, you're able to start to recoup some of that money and, of course, not have to foot the bill for it. So there's so many approaches out there. But I think it's important to understand that if you're not doing this, you are falling further and further behind just in your market performance alone, and trying to fill those units that right now everybody's struggling with.
Well, I'd add too, we were talking about this yesterday. The third-party management game is, and I'm looking at someone who's now taking property management in-house. A few years ago, when we were starting, at a smart home company, our best customer was somebody that could afford, $500,000 a project to deploy this technology. Well, that's not third-party management. Okay.
Exactly.
You fast forward to today, third-party managers are saying, hey, I need this AI tool, I need this tool, because people management is getting harder and harder. And for any asset manager in the room, you're scared about doing property management because people management is the biggest challenge. Well, you take this a step further. You're looking at some of the biggest third-party management companies out there right now. They're all racing to solve this problem of managing people via technology. And so now what you're seeing, and you just said this, is how do you solve retention? Well, this is a people business, right? And so if technology can start to solve for the mundane aspects that your leasing agents or your property managers need to do, well, now you can spend more time making sure that your people don't leave.
Absolutely.
Right. And so that's where I think this convergence is now is these third-party guys are saying, I need to catch up. I need to get with the tech. And so if you are just an asset manager, I promise you probably have your property manager saying, hey, can you spend some money so that I can deploy some of this tech?
Absolutely.
And that's where the conversation has changed drastically. You've watched some of the largest, the country's largest operators say, hey, I think Asset Living, who's number 2, RPM in that top 5, are all signing national agreements with technology vendors because they're trying to get ahead of it, not just from a resident revenue perspective, but to help them manage their teams more efficiently so that they can provide better services to their renters.
So with technology deployed, whatever that technology might be, you're getting data, and that data is being turned into intelligence and should help you to be able to take more actionable insights into your business. As we think about what does it take to be able to deploy some new technology within your organization, I've got kind of 3 best practices here, and then I'll flip it over to Demetrios to tell us if these kind of feels like it's hitting all the notes or if it's missing anything. The first is making sure you're linking that tech to real outcomes. That you've decided ahead of time, hey, we know this is the OpEx we hope to see get better. This is either the revenue we expect to get better, or this is the attrition, customer churn number we expect to get better. Second is to really think through your infrastructure and your integration planning to understand, are you partnering with the right company? And then the last one is to think of this as not just a one-time deployment, it's making sure that you are providing the support needed to all of your staff on an ongoing basis to be able to know how to use this new technology. And I'd ask, does this resonate with you? Is there anything that's missing? And what have you seen as some of the biggest obstacles in being able to deploy technologies within a company?
That was a great sales pitch for Taylor and my consulting firm. There's companies out there that'll help you do this. But to put it really simply, look at the most recent earnings calls from your top REITs over the last 24 to 36 months. Every single one of them has deployed somewhere between $20 and $40 million a year in CapEx on technology. That technology may be smart tech, from locks to climate to leak, maybe is a little bit more sophisticated as infrastructure as we think about Wi-Fi. What's one of the, I'd say one, but the two biggest reasons why people move out? Bad maintenance, cell service. It's the reality, right? Especially for my mid and high rise folks. When you've got concrete, you probably have terrible cell signal. People move out because of that. As Taylor pointed out, the Gen Z, my 18-year-old son, I can't get his face off of his screen. So when you have a solution like Wi-Fi or some sort of infrastructure there, that specifically is a type of technology your renters are willing to pay for. One of the first things that they're doing when they move into your homes is they've probably already called Verizon or Cox or Quest or whoever that incumbent is to get Wi-Fi services. So if you have it already, well, now you've got rent increase. But now if you're saying, hey, I've got a Wi-Fi infrastructure, you've just enabled your smart technology solutions that much better.
Absolutely.
From those leak sensors that may be in the wall. I think someone was talking about designing behind the wall, right? Connectivity is generally the biggest challenge that you're going to have in design of IoT devices. So as you talk about infrastructure, Brandon said it beautifully. I believe we may talk about this a little bit later, but as we talk about continuous enablement, the biggest challenge, the reason why these REITs spend so much money on a yearly basis is because as we talk about people management, when you send a team member that is up to date on the new tech and how it all works over here, but maybe you've got another adjacent community that doesn't have this tech, that employee actually struggles 10x more when they go somewhere else and they don't have this tech now.
That's right.
And so stopping or just choosing a unit or not doing your whole community or doing your portfolio in that region is actually going to cause more challenges for you. And again, that gets kind of back into the PM world. So I think you hit it on the head here, Brandon.
And so I'll turn it over to Sanjay to see if there's anything he's kind of seen as what are some of the challenges. And I'll flip to this next slide, which is the top three pitfalls. But you'll see these are pretty much the opposite of the three that we saw, is that you've got siloed systems that don't integrate, so you got to look for that integration. You're not providing that staff training and the resident education on the technology. And then you have a misalignment between what your operational objectives were and what you were doing from a tech perspective.
Yeah, so from what we have seen in the deployments that we are making, the real obstacle is not the hardware, the software, or even the cost. The real problem is fragmentation. So you have so many different vendors providing so many different solutions. Right? So if you go into a building, there'll be one guy providing you a sub-meter, another guy comes up with a leak detection solution, then there's a data collection guy, and there's a billing person, and then the billing guy cannot do leak detection, so you need a leak detection dashboard. So all of these things, you end up managing vendors instead of managing your building, right? So what we are looking to solve here is trying to integrate all of this into a vertically integrated platform where we want to be able to manage water. And we provide APIs to hook into any BMS platforms that you have in the building. Right, so we do all the way from device management to data collection, to billing, to leak management and analytics, all of that on a single platform. What that allows your property management or operator to be much more efficient, be proactive with things, and it reduces cost and reduces the headache of having to manage so many vendors. Because that is real. I mean, the integration problem is real. And that is what we are focused on solving. We are working with some of the top players in the industry to see if we can provide API hooks to go into their platform so they can show all of the information that we have on a BMS platform as well. So for folks, for builders that are looking to put some kind of effort into building or putting technology in your buildings, focus on platforms that prioritize functionality. Don't focus on point solutions that don't have an API hook into that platform. So make sure when you go for point solutions, they also offer APIs to hook into a bigger, a dashboard that you can manage one dashboard.
You need solutions that will be able to talk to each other using those APIs.
Yes, so if you have point solutions only, you're gonna have trouble managing that vendor. There's a lot of finger pointing, if something doesn't work.
That takes some research to kind of figure out, does this solution work with this solution? And I think that's certainly where, if you haven't gone through those challenges before, there's individuals here at the conference that can certainly help you with that. We've talked about, question, yes?
Absolutely. So we have our own hub, a data collector. So we use dongles to pull out information from electric meter, gas meter, heat meter, and we can visualize all of that on our dashboard. Yeah. So if you have a third-party sub-meter that's doing pulse. Now with pulse meters, there's an analogy between the old meters that they're only made for billing, right? It's like the cell phone analogy. You have the old flip phones. The only function is to make a phone call, right? And then you have the smartphones. You have a lot of information. So you have to decide what you want to do with your building, right? If you have one of those devices, we can get reading once a day or maybe once in a few days. That's how they send information, right? Because they run they try to be very economical on how they send data. But that's not good enough for analytics and real-time monitoring. So if you're looking only for sub-metering and you have something like that in your building, yes, we can put a dongle and pull that onto our dashboard and do billing. But we won't be able to give you real-time analytics, leak detection, insurance stuff, and ESG. All that stuff is not possible, right? Because those are old meter. There's an old technology. They use the turbine meters, or it's not using ultrasonic and real-time monitoring. So that's the difference. But yes, to answer your question, yes, we can do that.
I think it's a good segue into our next section, talking about the insurance impact and also from a property valuation perspective. So when you look at that risk reduction, it translates to concrete savings in insurance expenses that impact your NOI. And so I'll kind of throw the question over to, it can be Demetrios or Sanjay, how are investors and appraisers recognizing the value that these type of investments are making in property valuations?
So if you look at the folks that we talk to, we look at investors and appraisers, they're not just looking at, square footage and zip codes anymore, right? They're looking at a property and saying, is this resilient? Is this efficient? Is this future-proofed, right? That means, do you have technology built in that can generate revenue and reduce operating cost? Right? So that's where Saya comes in. We are building our solution to integrate and solve some of these problems, right? So investors are looking at insurance information. They're looking at ESG information to see how increase the value of the property. And appraisers are, again, looking at operating expense, how you're reducing that. That's how they're going to look at the valuation. So valuation is going to change. It is changing. It's not just looking at zip codes and looking at square footage anymore. So I think that's what I...
And this is a list of insurance providers you've already partnered with and that recognize the value of a system like yours.
Absolutely. So AXA XL is very aggressive. They provide, better coverage, better deductible, all of that stuff. Steadily, we are linked with Steadily. So any property less than 20 units, it's automatic. You can go to the link, put the information, you get a rebate right away. Some of these other guys, we also do the cost of construction coverage, which is builder's risk. So if you're building a new property, we can monitor the temporary lines, and we can automatically shut it off during non-working hours. So people come in at 6 a.m., turn on the water, shut it off at 7 p.m. significantly reduces your risk, and you get discounts on your builder's risk insurance. So we're doing that on multiple properties for 18 months or whatever that cycle is for construction. And after that, they can use the system for their monitoring for the building anyway.
Is that something that you saw the use case, or are you seeing some of the insurance companies actually coming to you
They're coming
saying,
to us
saying, hey, can you fix this particular issue because we're seeing lots of claims?
Absolutely. I mean, we're doing projects in Canada, a few of them builder's risk, even AXA, a lot of builder's risk projects. And then once we do the builder's risk, that's the point of entry meter right there in blue on the bottom. And then we do the risers, we can do the fan coils with the heating and cooling systems. And then we have, if you go further to the next, here, this is in suite, right? So you have the sub-meters that come in, the hot and cold water. You could have a toilet sensor, you could have flood sensors for washer and dryer. So we have solutions. So if you have an older property, you have one riser that goes into multiple units, you can't do anything. Okay, so you can protect it with a toilet sensor. That's risky. That's always going to have issues. Or you could put something on your fan coil unit, like a little flood sensor puck, and you're covered to a certain extent. You'll still get some insurance benefits with that. And this slide here, this is the type of information we send to insurance companies that shows how the property gets real-time information, and you see the profile of the property improving over time. That's how the risk-aware platform that we have works. So it shows Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, the risk has significantly gone down. You get better rates and better benefits, so that's what it is.
Fantastic. Yes.
So if you have an existing building, and if you have sub-meters, the old sub-meters, the ones that you are probably somebody used it and you're not using it anymore, or it's just a basic sub-meter, we can just swap it out because we are weights and measures certified. So the lay length is exactly the same. You take that out, put the smart meter in, and you're now getting sub-metering and you're getting risk management, leak detection with that. If you don't, if it's not built for that, like if you have a riser for that, there's nothing, you have to do the RUBS method for billing, but you can still protect your individual units with, say, a flood sensor, a puck, or you could use a toilet sensor. So there are multiple options that we have for these types of buildings as well. I'm not aware of the details of how it is. It all depends on the type of property, all of that. There's a lot. They have, so the underwriter and the actuaries, they have a bunch of information. What we provide them is one piece of what they use to decide what it's going to be, right? It's almost like your good driver's discount. There's a score that goes in, right? So we are providing one metrics of multiple. So I don't have an answer for what it's going to be, but I'm sure that I know that there is a benefit to do that.
And I'll just jump in really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I can connect you with the people that I'm working with, like people from AXA or Steadily or one of these guys, because we work with them.
And I'll just give you a quick, I like to quote earnings reports. Essex, so on the West Coast, about 275 buildings, okay? Once they fully deployed their portfolio with leak sensors, a part of their smart solution, they weren't as sophisticated as doing billing or shut-off valves. They just did pucks, okay? On average, and these are all retrofits, on average, somewhere between 6 to 8 sensors per unit. I'll let the respective vendor speak to the cost of that stuff, right? But about 8 pucks. They were saying MetLife was their insurance carrier. They saw about a 12% decrease in premiums across their entire portfolio. Another REIT, Equity Residential, again, large organization, they do self-insurance, right? And so then they saw just the savings in damages, a lot of mid to high rises. Basically, we're starting to pay for their deployments just in the savings alone. So that's just quick anecdotal data for you.
That's good point. So one of the builders I'm working with, they're doing self-insurance as well. Mm-hmm. They have everything covered, and they're saying that they're saving a lot on insurance. I'm not sure how they do it, but that's what they're doing. They have a whole insurance company within.
Mm-hmm. So this is a great use case is over the next 48 hours, as you're going to hear stories from lots of different types of technology, lots of different specific vendors. As you're putting together your business use case, the vendors are going to be able to share with you what that business use case should be. As we look at the market segment differences, because some of you are representing Class A luxury, we got some of you that are looking at affordable. As we're looking at potential technology areas here and trying to identify what might be one of those strategic opportunities in your particular segment, either because it really hasn't been adopted yet, but the technology's improved to a point where you're starting to, that ROI can potentially fit with that, or it can help you stand out from your competition. I've kind of got those highlighted on here, and I'll just kind of flip over to our panel here. Any things on this matrix that kind of stuck out to you that you're like, yep, exactly, we're seeing that happen? And I know you probably can't even see it.
I was going to say, I wish I could see it.
I would tell you, I've got eyes like a hawk. I would tell you really quickly, my biggest takeaway, and this is where I spent a lot of my life, this isn't a Class A thing, right? Class A just does it because they have the money for it, right? But affordable market, again, I hate to keep quoting the big guys, right? But the top 50 that represents a couple of million units. I think the top 24 have deployed their entire portfolio with some sort of smart tech package, right? And those units aren't generally Class A. Their market rate, I'm being nice, they've done some retrofit across their entire portfolio. Rent lift, maybe, they get it, they got it, right? Done. They're chasing operational efficiency, and they're saving money because of the protections this type of tech is offering. And this chart to me just screams, there's a solution for everything. How deep you go, I mean, that's up to you and your budget, but it's out there. Everyone's using it widely across the industry.
So I'm just looking at this, I feel, Class A, probably they manage their properties a lot better as well, right? And they're investing in technology. I think affordable needs it more because that's where they can improve their operational, efficiency and also make money. So I think it's a little flipped. It's just a matter of thinking. I think it's more about that.
Most definitely. Like we actually represent one of the largest affordable builder in the country right now, and we're actually helping them navigate through this specifically. Because they, of course, as an affordable builder, they don't have the budget, period. They do not have the budget. And so they're looking at that underwritten, line item of how can we offset our expenditures. And in most scenarios, they don't understand that it's not, of course, a one size fits all. And I think really that's where you guys are going to, of course, over the next few days, be learning that, good, better, best is a real thing in the industry, right? You do not want to put the same thing transparently in every single building, primarily because it's not one size fits all. You need to understand what are the unique things that you're trying to accomplish with technology in that community, in that asset, and then ultimately finding, if you have, let's say, a vendor that you negotiate great rates with, you don't even necessarily have to manage the vendors. There are actually companies, because they've been doing this since 2017, that have actually done the work for you. And you can work with a third party, I hate to name drop, but a company like SKBM Smart Tech. What they actually do, they're agnostic with all the different providers and software vendors out in the space. They work with you guys in the design phase to understand what is it you're trying to accomplish. And then they've already got the relationships. They've already got the pricing worked out, and they can bring it to the table. This is what you need. This is how you need to do it, and essentially have a more consultative approach. So I would say, if you're starting from square one, I would not start in the direction of, let me go meet with 50 vendors, because you're going to be more confused by the time you get out of all those pitches, because they're all trying to pit each other against one another, essentially. Okay, we do this really well. Well, this company doesn't do this really well, right? So very much I would encourage you guys finding an integration partner and or a design partner that can work with you and help you meet those needs. That is going to be far, far better off in shortening your cycle to adopt the technology, navigate the various technologies on the market without having to have an expert, and then, of course, getting you guys across the line and accomplishing your goal as soon as possible.
look out in the future, there's still a lot more things that are coming down the pipe, and you'll hear some of that in our other sessions today in terms of technology that's out there, that's on the forefront. Thanks for being here. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at breakfast.